Emma slams the car door behind her, the sound sharp enough to make James flinch. He watches her stride toward the office building, heels clicking against the pavement like a countdown he can't stop. She doesn't glance back. She never does. Not anymore. And he feels it immediately, an emptiness clawing at his chest, a realization that's too late, too bitter. This isn't just anger. This is regret, and it's suffocating. For years, he had taken her for granted, dismissing her brilliance, her warmth, the way she somehow made the mundane feel like something worth remembering. And now, watching her move with confidence he no longer controls, he feels the raw pull of obsession stirring in his veins. Every interaction flashes in his mind, every small dismissal he had ever offered. The way he interrupted her ideas in meetings, the way he laughed off her ambitions like they were nothing more than jokes. The casual cruelty of his neglect, the way he assumed she'd always be there, waiting, loyal, untouchable. And suddenly, that certainty has shattered. He doesn't just want her back, he needs her. He craves the attention he never gave, the heart he never protected, and the respect he never showed. And in that craving, there's an edge of fear, because he knows she's already started to build a life without him. A life where he is no longer the center, no longer the authority, no longer necessary. Emma pushes open the glass doors of the office, her bag swinging lightly from her shoulder. The receptionist greets her, and she smiles politely, professionally. But James's gaze lingers on her as she moves past him, noticing the subtle shift in her aura. She is untouchable now, not because she's cold, but because she's free. The very freedom he had denied her in their past relationship now radiates from her, like a beacon that both taunts and terrifies him. He remembers the nights she stayed silent while he spoke, the times she softened his edges, the moments she saved him from himself. And now every memory is a dagger, sharp and unforgiving, twisting in his chest with the weight of missed chances. He follows her in the conference room, pretending to be casual, but every instinct screams at him to stop, to change the course of events before she becomes permanently unreachable. He hears the laughter of her new colleagues, the subtle warmth in their conversations with her, and he realizes it's a world he never allowed himself to truly be part of. His obsession grows not from the idea of love, but from the unbearable truth that he underestimated the very force that had always anchored him. She wasn't just a woman. She was unyielding, brilliant, and finally, undeniable. As the day drags on, James's mind doesn't focus on meetings, reports, or deadlines. It focuses on her laugh, the way she tucks a strand of hair behind her ear, the sharp wit that once made him feel inferior and alive at the same time. Every memory, every small slight, every ignored compliment now feeds the fire consuming him, and the cruel irony gnaws at him. The more he craves her, the more she seems to exist in a world that has no place for him. She thrives in spaces he never thought she would occupy, moves with purpose he never demanded, and smiles in ways he can't claim. He doesn't just want her back. He fears losing her completely to someone else who finally sees her worth. When she steps into the elevator, James hesitates. He debates whether to follow, whether to approach, whether to speak. His pride battles with his desperation, and for the first time, he realizes how powerless he has always been when it came to her. The doors close, and he feels the space between them, both literal and metaphorical, stretched like a chasm he may never cross. And in that split second, the obsession crystallizes. Emma is no longer his to command. She is hers, entirely, fiercely, and he is trapped on the outside, forced to watch, forced to crave, forced to remember every moment he ever took for granted. By the time he drives home that evening, every decision he has ever made against her swims in his mind like a relentless tide. He can't sleep, can't eat, can't focus. Every interaction, every laugh, every smile she's ever given to anyone else but him becomes a torment he can't escape. And deep down, he knows this isn't just regret. It's an awakening. He had been blind to what she meant, and now he cannot see past her absence. The obsession isn't just a desire, it's a reckoning. One that will drive him to corners of his mind he never wanted to explore and actions he never thought he'd take. Because losing Emma is no longer an option. Not in his mind. Not in his heart. Not ever again. James sits in the quiet of his penthouse, the city lights below flickering like distant warnings. He scrolls through old photos of Emma, the casual smiles, the moments he ignored, the evenings he assumed would always return. Each image gnaws at him, reminding him how recklessly he let her slip through his fingers. His phone vibrates a message from a colleague about a late meeting, but he doesn't read it. His thoughts are consumed entirely by her. He replays every word, every glance, every subtle dismissal that once seemed inconsequential, and with each memory, his obsession deepens, a force he can neither resist nor rationalize. Meanwhile, Emma sits at a cafe, her laptop open but untouched, her attention caught by the way sunlight bounces off the glass across the street. Her life is moving forward, steady and deliberate, built carefully on independence and self-respect. Yet there's a flicker of unease she can't quite name, a shadow of familiarity in the thought of James. She remembers the nights she stayed up waiting for him to notice her, the moments she swallowed hurt just to keep the peace. And somewhere, buried beneath the layers of her strength, she feels the pull of a man who once dismissed her worth but now, perhaps, sees it too late. James calls her office repeatedly, first a hesitant, professional tone, then increasingly desperate. She ignores the calls, each ring an echo of the past, each voicemail a reminder of the control he once wielded and lost. But she can sense him there, on the edge of her world, lingering. Every move she makes is watched in the shadows of his obsession, even if he doesn't realize it. He watches social media profiles, reads through mutual contacts updates, and studies patterns, trying to decipher the rhythm of her life without her knowing. Every small victory she achieves, every smile she shares with someone else, sends a shiver through him, a mix of admiration, envy, and something darker, more possessive than he wants to admit. Emma begins to notice subtle signs of his intrusion, a car that seems familiar parked a block away, an unexpected email from him, professionally toned yet carrying an undercurrent of urgency. And though she's wary, she cannot ignore the truth in her own heart. She holds the power now. The tables have turned. Where once she chased him, hoping for acknowledgement, now he chases her, desperate, restless, untethered. And the thought alone thrills her, not because she wants him back immediately, but because she finally understands her worth, the gravity he once underestimated. James's world narrows to one point: Emma. Every decision he makes, every meeting, every casual conversation is filtered through her presence or, rather, her absence. Friends notice his distraction, colleagues question his focus, but he cannot care. He's lost in the magnetic pull of her independence, the sharp brilliance that he once overshadowed. And in this obsession, there's a dangerous clarity. He will not let her go again. Not as a passive partner, not as a bystander, not as the man who once took her for granted. Every move, every plan, every strategy he devises revolves around reclaiming her attention, her admiration, her very presence. Emma, meanwhile, meets with potential partners for her new venture, her confidence radiating. She doesn't need him, she hasn't needed him for months, but there's an undeniable thrill in seeing the man who dismissed her suddenly consumed by her life. She senses his longing, his desperation, and it fuels a quiet, steady satisfaction. She has control now, and control, she knows, is far more intoxicating than desire. Yet beneath her composure lies a subtle question she doesn't answer. How far will he go to have her back? And is she prepared for the consequences if he does? That night, James leaves the office later than usual. Walking past the cafes, the streets, the quiet places she frequents, he doesn't approach her, not yet, but the compulsion to know, to see, to measure her world against the one he has built without her, is irresistible. The obsession is no longer just a thought, it's a presence, a shadow that shapes his days and haunts his nights. Every encounter, every imagined interaction, every possibility of her noticing him again drives him closer to a line he has never crossed before. He is no longer a man who can casually take her for granted. He is a man teetering on the edge of obsession, and Emmanuel, resolute, untouchably, is the force that both terrifies and exhilarates him. And in the stillness of the city, as lights flicker and distant sirens wail, one truth becomes painfully clear. This is no longer about love, or forgiveness, or even regret. This is about power, desire, and the dangerous gravity of someone who finally realizes that losing her was the greatest mistake of his life. James doesn't just want her back, he cannot imagine a world where she is anyone else's. And somewhere, deep in the space between yearning and desperation, the game begins, silent but deadly, pulling them both into a web from which neither will emerge unchanged. James waits outside the building long after the workday ends, watching the glow from Emma's office windows. The city hums around him, oblivious to the storm consuming him inside. He debates, should he confront her? Should he pretend everything is casual, professional, harmless? But the thought of her laughing with someone else, sharing her brilliance and warmth without him, twists his chest. Obsession is no longer silent. It whispers, demands, pushes him toward choices he knows are reckless, yet irresistible. Emma leaves the office, carrying a stack of papers and a calm determination that makes James's pulse spike. She doesn't notice him at first. Her focus is steady, precise, completely her own. He steps forward, forcing his voice into casual neutrality. But the second she turns, the entire world narrows to the weight of her gaze. Recognition flickers across her face, but it's tempered by wariness, a shield he once broke effortlessly, now impenetrable. She doesn't smile. She doesn't flinch. She simply studies him, calculating, measuring, holding the power he once wielded. "James," she says, the single word sharp yet composed. It carries years of history, unspoken truths, and a subtle warning. "I am not yours." He nods, words caught in the throttle of desire and pride. He wants to apologize, to explain, to beg, but the voice in his head, the one that feeds the obsession, silences everything except the urgency to reclaim her attention. "Emma," he finally says, each syllable deliberate. "We need to talk." She tilts her head, considering, before shaking it ever so slightly. "Not here," she says, turning back toward the street, signaling that she alone controls the pace of this encounter. James follows, instinctively, but he notices every micro-expression, every shift in her posture. She moves with purpose, unyielding, and yet with a rhythm that draws him closer without her even trying. The chase, he realizes, is intoxicating. For the first time, he is not in control, and that lack of control fuels the obsession like wildfire. Over the next few days, James begins a careful campaign of presence and subtlety. A message here, a carefully timed encounter there, always maintaining the edge between professional and personal, familiar and distant. He studies her routines, noting the cafes she frequents, the people she laughs with, the moments when she is entirely herself. Each observation is a fuel for the fire inside him, a reminder of what he lost and what he craves. He doesn't just want her attention, he needs to prove he deserves it now, after having thrown it away for so long. Emma senses the shift immediately. There's a tension in the air whenever he is near, an almost electric charge that makes her pulse quicken despite herself. She is careful, deliberate, maintaining distance, but the knowledge of his obsession intrigues her. It isn't flattering, it isn't comfortable, but it is powerful, and power, she knows, is magnetic. She tests him, letting a conversation linger just long enough to gauge his intentions, watching how he reacts to boundaries she once ignored. Every subtle victory she claims reinforces her freedom and her control over the dynamic that once suffocated her. James grows bolder. A chance encounter at a charity gala forces them into the same space, and the air between them crackles with tension. He cannot stop staring, cannot stop measuring, cannot stop craving. She laughs with others, and a pang of jealousy cuts deeper than he expected. The realization is brutal. She thrives without him, and he can no longer assume she will bend to his will. The obsession sharpens into something raw and unrelenting, a mix of admiration, desperation, and the unshakable fear of permanent loss. And then the first real confrontation happens. Alone in a quiet street after the gala, he speaks in the low, urgent tone that betrays both control and chaos. "Emma, listen. I know I've made mistakes, but you have to understand, I can't stop thinking about you. I don't want to lose you again." She regards him silently, the city lights framing her face like a portrait of someone untouchable. Her voice is steady, precise. "James, you already did lose me. Do not mistake desperation for love. I am not yours to reclaim." Her words sting, but they ignite something darker in him. Obsession is no longer just thought, it is action. It is strategy. It is a hunger that will not be ignored. He nods, silently, acknowledging her point, yet internally planning, scheming, plotting every interaction, every chance encounter, every subtle movement that might pull her back into his orbit. For him, losing Emma is no longer an option. He can no longer afford patience. He must act, carefully, dangerously, relentlessly. Meanwhile, Emma begins noticing small, inexplicable signs that James is watching, tracking, anticipating. A familiar car parked nearby, A shadow glimpsed across a street, a perfectly timed email. She senses the obsessive intensity in his actions, and though she maintains composure, a seed of wariness is planted. She has power now, but she cannot ignore the raw force of someone who once underestimated her, and now sees only the one path he cannot follow, ignoring her again. That night, as James drives through the city streets, his mind races with possibilities and plans. He cannot sleep, cannot eat, cannot focus on the mundane. The obsession dominates everything, every thought, every breath, every heartbeat. Emma exists now as both beacon and torment, a force that compels him toward actions he never imagined, and a constant reminder of the consequences of taking her for granted. He is no longer a man who casually loved. He is a man consumed, and every step he takes brings him closer to the dangerous precipice where desire, obsession, and consequences collide. The rain hits the city in cold, relentless sheets, and James stands under the awning, watching as Emma exits a boutique with a calm precision that makes his chest tighten. She carries herself with effortless authority, completely unaware or, perhaps deliberately unaware, of the storm brewing just beyond the glass doors. He feels it in his veins, this obsessive pull that he cannot name, cannot control. The man who once took her for granted is gone, replaced by someone who will stop at nothing to reclaim what he foolishly lost. He approaches cautiously, each step measured but urgent. She notices him instantly, the subtle narrowing of her eyes signaling recognition and wariness. "James," she says, her voice even, but under it lies the steel he knows he cannot break with charm alone. "You're here again." He swallows the desperation in his throat, forcing a calm he doesn't feel. "I had to see you. Just once." The words are simple, but the intensity in his gaze betrays him. This is no casual encounter. This is a man on the edge, consumed by what he cannot have, yet refuses to release. Emma sighs, adjusting the strap of her bag, a small gesture that somehow amplifies her independence. "Seeing me isn't enough. You think obsession can fix years of neglect." Her words cut deeper than any insult could. He flinches, but instead of retreating, the obsession sharpens. She is the challenge, the prize, the force he cannot resist. Every casual smile, every glance with someone else, fuels the need to prove he deserves her attention now. The game has escalated, and James knows there's no turning back. Over the next days, he becomes bolder, taking risks he once would have avoided. He attends events he has no reason to attend, times his appearances with precision, and orchestrates encounters that force her awareness without overt confrontation. Emma notices, naturally cautious, but also intrigued. She senses the obsession beneath his actions, the relentless pull he exerts, and though she maintains her composure, a thrill runs through her recognition of her power, of the gravity she always held over him. She is untouchable now, yet she can feel the storm he is building. One evening, their worlds collide unexpectedly. A mutual friend hosts a private dinner, and James arrives, tension coiling around him like a living thing. Emma enters moments later, radiant, confident, the room bending subtly around her presence. Every step she takes, every laugh, every glance with someone else intensifies the pull inside him. His obsession is no longer a secret. It drives his every thought, his every decision. Yet Emma, aware yet composed, allows the tension to linger, testing the boundaries, testing the man who once dismissed her. The conversation is charged, each word deliberate, each silence loaded with meaning. "You can't just show up and expect things to be like they were," Emma says, her tone calm but unwavering. James nods, acknowledging her point, but inside he is seething with the need to prove, to reclaim, to dominate the narrative of their lives. "I'm not expecting," he replies evenly. I'm realizing. I see what I lost." His honesty is raw, unrefined, and it cuts through the polished veneer of the room like a knife. She studies him, every micro-expression revealing the obsession he can no longer hide. It unnerves her, but also fascinates her. She understands the danger of someone who has finally awakened to their mistakes, someone who is relentless, who will not rest until they have attempted to rewrite history. And yet, she feels the pull of curiosity, the subtle acknowledgement that for all his faults, he is still James, irresistible, flawed, and desperately human. The night ends with no resolution, only tension stretching between them like a live wire. James drives through the empty streets afterward, mind racing, heart pounding, obsession sharpening into something almost tangible. He thinks of her constantly, the way she moves, the way she speaks, the way she exists independently of him, yet dominates his every thought. Every failure, every slight, every moment he took her for granted becomes fuel for the fire. He cannot stop, will not stop, and in the quiet of the night, he knows the reckoning is inevitable. Emma, alone in her apartment, reflects on the evening. She senses the obsession growing, the lines blurring between desire, attention, and control. She recognizes the danger and the thrill. She knows she must remain vigilant, yet part of her cannot deny the pull, the curiosity, the power she holds over a man who once dismissed her. The game has changed, the stakes are higher, and the next move will determine whether the obsession destroys them both or transforms their lives forever. In that silence, both of them sit with the same undeniable truth: nothing will ever be simple again. Every glance, every word, every subtle interaction becomes a battlefield. James is no longer just a man who took her for granted. He is a man possessed by the need to reclaim, a force she must navigate with caution, strategy, and awareness of the danger simmering just beneath his desperate, obsessive exterior, and neither of them can predict who will falter first. The night air is heavy with tension as James waits outside Emma's apartment building, rain dripping from his coat, heart hammering with the relentless pull of obsession. Every instinct screams to call, to knock, to demand, but he restrains himself for now. He has learned patience, or at least the illusion of it. Tonight is different. Tonight, he knows, the stakes are final. Every calculated move, every subtle manipulation over the past weeks has led to this moment. He cannot afford mistakes. She is everything he ever took for granted, and losing her completely is a terror he refuses to face. Emma steps out onto the balcony, wrapped in a shawl against the chill, and James watches her, breath caught in his chest. She doesn't see him at first, and when she finally glances toward the street, her eyes sharpen. Recognition flashes, and with it, the same calm command she always wielded effortlessly. She does not move closer, does not beckon, but she does not turn away either. She lets him see her, lets him measure the distance between them, and in that moment, James knows the obsession he feels is mirrored by the gravity she exerts over him. He cannot look away, he does not want to. He calls her name softly, almost reverently, and she responds not with anger, but with measured curiosity. "James," she says, voice carrying the weight of both warning and intrigue. "Why are you here?" The question is simple, but it carries the tension of everything unsaid between them. He steps closer, unwilling to hide the desperation, the longing, the dangerous clarity of obsession. "Because I cannot let you go," he admits, each word deliberate. "Because I finally see everything I ignored, everything I lost." Her gaze sharpens, but she does not recoil. She has always known her power. She has always understood the consequences of being underestimated. "You should have realized it sooner," she replies evenly. "Now you're here, but I am not waiting for you anymore. I am not yours to claim." Her words pierce him, yet the obsession burns brighter, more urgent. It is no longer about desire or regret. It is about the undeniable need to confront the reality he created and the consequences he can no longer ignore. They stand on opposite sides of the balcony, the distance small yet monumental. The rain falls harder, masking the tension, making every movement, every glance electric. James reaches out, just slightly, a gesture of both apology and assertion. "Emma, let me try. Let me prove that I see you now, that I understand, that I will never take you for granted again." Her eyes flicker, a mixture of amusement, curiosity, and caution. "Trying isn't enough," she warns. "This isn't a game. You had your chance." And that is when the confrontation shifts from words to the quiet war of presence and obsession. James steps closer, the storm around them echoing the turmoil inside him. Emma holds her ground, unyielding yet fully aware of the pull he exerts. The night stretches, every second thick with possibility, danger, and unresolved desire. The obsession has escalated beyond thought. It is a living force, a challenge, a reckoning neither can deny. Every heartbeat, every glance, every subtle movement becomes a negotiation of power, attention, and the fragile thread of control Emma has always maintained. Finally, James stops, a breathless pause between surrender and aggression. "I know I am late," he says, voice low, raw. "I know I have hurt you, but I cannot ignore this. I cannot ignore you." The honesty, the desperation, the obsession, it all spills into the night, tangible and undeniable. Emma studies him, seeing not just the man he is now, but the reflection of who he once was, who he failed to appreciate, and who he could become if he channels this obsession into respect, into acknowledgement, into love. And in that charged silence, a choice emerges. She does not speak, does not step back, does not step forward. She lets the night stretch, lets him confront the full weight of his obsession, and the realization that it will not bend her will unless he earns it, unless he proves he can navigate the consequences of his past. For Emma, this is empowerment. For James, it is obsession transformed into a reckoning. The rain falls harder, soaking them both, yet the moment is electric, frozen in tension, possibility, and consequence. They do not yet know how this will end, whether obsession will destroy him, whether her independence will withstand the force of his desire, or whether a fragile, hard-won connection will emerge from the chaos. But one truth is undeniable: nothing will ever be the same. The woman he took for granted has become his obsession, and he will chase her, challenge her, and confront the consequences of his past until the final line is drawn. And in the darkness, under the storm, the city, unaware of the battle waging on a single balcony, the stage is set. Obsession meets independence, desire confronts caution, and the outcome is uncertain. But one thing is clear: the reckoning has begun, and neither of them will leave unchanged.